Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. If you were in any doubt whatsoever that the government are gaslighting us, hiding the truth from us, preparing lies with which they can try and control us, then be in doubt no more. After Southport, the government drafted a report. Well, they asked a group of people to draft a report for them that they wanted to use to smooth over the cracks, create a whitewash, make it look as though Islamic terrorism isn't a problem in this country. They wanted to show that, well, there are lots of people that are doing terrible things and we must act in a cohesive manner, after all, for the good of society, etc., etc. And this report was meant to be pushed. They had it all prepared. It was going to be the official government line. They were going to be lining up the mainstream media to push the agenda of bullshit that was going to emanate in a tsunami of brown sludge straight from Westminster and Number 10. They were attempting to create a false narrative, a narrative that they wanted to push on the British people. Now, you won't see what I'm about to tell you in the mainstream media. Far from it. They'll try now to hide this up, cover it up, to show that they're not complicit in the cover-up, that they're not part of, a propaganda machine being run from the seats of power, because they like to pretend that they are an independent press. But clearly they're not. We saw after the attack, everything within days of the court case, everything was, it's all Amazon's fault. And all the mainstream media, the same story, the Amazon story, pushed out by Number 10, saying, you publish this, you make Amazon the problem, or you don't get access to us, this government, or anything like that. Access media bending to the will of their political paymasters. Well, it won't wash now, because that report has been leaked. But as I say, the mainstream media aren't running with it. But it is out there. And it makes for some grim reading. But it'll be particularly worrying now because it's out there, because the truth has been laid bare and exposed. The government have decided that, oh my God, and in a complete panic mode, and nothing else can be said, a panic mode, they have decided that what they're going to do instead of running with this and pushing this narrative is to completely ignore it and pretend that this report doesn't exist, or say that it was a report done by academics that we don't necessarily agree with, and bullshit. The report, I'm afraid, and I've written some notes that I'm coming off here because it's there because I've got some figures that I want to do. So I've jotted some notes, so please excuse me while I read from this because it's complex. But the report itself is using the Southport attacks as basically a false flag. It's a way that they are attempting to massively downplay the real and present threat of Islamism in this country, and in particular, Islamist is the word I'm looking for there, extremism that is rife in this country, and which the government does not want to admit exists because it will cause consternation and fear and anger amongst the British people. At the same time, they are trying to redefine what terrorism is and to castigate those who disagree with the government by classing them as far right, as though that's a bad thing. But I'm owning it now. I'm far right, right? Because look at me. I'm white, so I'm far right. I have centrist views, so I'm far right. I believe in law and order. I'm far right. That's how they're casting it. If you believe in good, wholesome living, you're far right. If you own a dog, you're far right. If you go into the countryside, you're far right. That's how they're pitching this. So let's all be far right. And then the badge that they're trying to apply to us is meaningless. Now, they've done this roundup over the goings on in this country, and the figures for themselves speak for themselves. It appears that they're trying to soften what radical Islamist extremism is, and they're doing so by controlling the media, both television and the press. The one thing, of course, they can't control is the internet. That, of course, annoys them to hell. That is why they're coming for it. That's why they want censorship. They don't want conversations like this. They don't want people like me saying the things I'm about to say to you because it goes against their narrative. This is making me a far-right problem. But I don't care. I'm wearing my far-right badge. I might actually go and buy a badge, proud of being far-right or something like that. That way it just weakens any argument they have. But this roundup is to give radical Islamist extremism the same amount of mainstream media exposure as extreme environmental extremism, extreme misogyny, or the movement for Sikh independence, or anything like that. Anything that's vaguely there. Animal Liberation Front are being cast in the same way as radical Islamist terror. Clearly bollocks. Now, this is easily shown to be bollocks, and it's based basically on the fact that here in the UK, and I've got the numbers, Islamists are responsible for, deep breath, 94% of all deaths caused by terrorism since 1999. And just over 88% of injuries caused by terrorism over the same period. Islamic terrorism. Not Sikhism, not animal rights, not environmentalism, not misogyny. Islamic terrorism. In the last year, in 2024 alone, Islamists were responsible for 80% of police counter-terrorist charges. 80%. 75% of MI5's work is based on Muslim Islamic terrorism. And 63% of all terrorists held in custody are Islamic terrorists. I think you can see it's all a bit one-sided, and this is why the government did not want this report released, because it goes to show the extreme nature of Islamic terrorism, the presence of it and the threat of it in this country, and the fact that they don't want people in this country to be made aware of the absolute, sheer, clear and present danger that is represented by having this in our streets. The report is now classifying people who believe in two-tier policing as being far right. And yet we know and we can see that there is two-tier policing. We see it by the fact that they are not going around and arresting and charging thousands of child-raping Muslims because racism, scared, frit. You're far right. You're a far right problem if you complain about the amount of money and resources being spent on illegal immigrants. That makes you far right. You're far right if you express concerns over the safety of women and children. That makes you far right. These are what the government is trying to push. It's trying to push the agenda. Please don't blame the Islamists. Please don't blame the Muslims who are going around killing and raping children. Don't blame them. No. Blame the white people for complaining about it. Make the white people the far right, and let's make them the terrorists because they dare stand up and highlight the fact that Muslims are raping children and that Muslims are killing children in this country. Oh, and don't even start to complain about the thousands of young fighting age men coming across the channel, getting ready to replace us. Don't mention that. We need a change in this country. We need this country to look after itself because our government is not prepared to look after us. And I think the day is coming. And I think Musk is right. There will be a civil war in this country. I can see it. Because when the truth comes out and the government can't control the narrative, then the government is no longer on our side. They're actively working against us. You know, a revolution is when you realise who the enemy is. Thanks very much.